of former Pensions Minister Baroness Ros Altmann. Spoken to her many times on the show. Her suggestion is we should adopt the Swedish-style 3-day working week, but it's only for over 50s to keep them in the workplace. Let's talk to her right now about that. Good morning to you, Ros.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. And now, as a 55-year-old, I was very interested in this. And I'm moving from a 4-day week doing these early shifts, but I work on Sundays as well. The show doesn't just happen out of nowhere. You may think that, but it doesn't. But I'm moving to a 5-day week in the afternoons. Happy to go back to a 5-day week. No issue for me there. But I can completely understand why people, certainly in their 60s, will say, I don't want to work part-time. I don't want to work full-time. But I'm fascinated by this idea that we should live till routinely 80 or 90. But sometime in our mid-50s, we go, I think I'll just work part-time. But you think this might be necessary?
Well, actually, I think that the whole point of what I'm saying is that people shouldn't just think there's some magic age beyond which they don't work at all. The whole concept of retirement, I think, needs to be reconsidered. There's a whole new phase of life waiting to be grasped for people who are in the later stages of their working career, who may want to have more leisure time. Some people will be not well enough to work full-time in their 50s. Most people will be well enough into their 60s. But then what happens? So many of them just suddenly stop working. For their mental health, that's often not good. Certainly for their physical health, that can lead to decline. Yeah. Whereas if we normalise the idea that there's a period of pre-tirement, a few years where you're cutting down, but you're not stopping altogether, you will have more money to live on through the rest of your life. The economy will benefit because we've got huge increases in economic inactivity among the older workforce. I do agree with you. It should be more aiming for the 60s than the 50s.
But again, it does depend on the job. I can sit on my fat bum and do this job, and you know, if anyone still wanted me into my 80s, if you know, but you know, if you work on a building site, you're a nurse, you're doing it. I've done enough standing up jobs, waitressing and the like. You can't carry on. But this thing, I was fascinated speaking to, I mean, a couple of relatives of mine actually, both in their 50s, who've retired, and I said, oh, I thought you'd left your job. No, I've retired. I'm like, but you're my age. What are you? I mean, and my first thought wasn't what are you going to live on? But you know, that was the second thought. First one was, what are you going to do all day?
Yeah, exactly. But you know, many people, if they're lucky enough to have really good incomes or pensions that they can live on, they often go and do voluntary work. That's fine. Yeah. We need that in this country too. Some have left the workforce to care for loved ones because people don't want frail elderly people in care homes as much as they perhaps would have done in the past. But also, I think there is this mindset change that is needed both for employers, because there is still endemic ageism in the workplace. Yeah. An employer often doesn't even consider someone in their late 50s or early 60s for a role that those people could do really well. And many people, as they get older, might want to have some new type of career, which they do work part-time. Yeah. In Sweden, it's not expected that as soon as you leave the workforce, you're at the peak. You leave at the top.
Now that's interesting. Yes, that should be. Most people think that's the peak time that they're earning, and then they start retiring. I mean, I think it depends a lot on whether you enjoy your work. I'm lucky enough to be in a job I enjoy. A lot of people, I've done a lot of jobs, and a lot of people in jobs, they're just paying the bills for Friday night. That's all, and, you know, and that's all they're living for. And you know, 1 week away a year, and that's they're just getting by. And they're desperate to leave their jobs. I know people who genuinely counted down the months, the weeks, the days, and the hours to the day they could retire for their statutory pension. But the reality is we can't have millions of people being retired for 30 or 40 years.
Well, it's not good for them, and it's not good for young people, and it's not good for the economy. There are many, many reasons why encouraging this period of pre-tirement where, you know, your whole life is different. You don't stop altogether at a particular age. You see how your health is. You decide maybe to retrain for a whole new type of work.
I've got to be honest also, no offence to all the under 30s who are listening and in the control room as well. I think most people in their 50s are rather more reliable.
Well,
better
often will-
employees than the young folk who are coming out with some of their mad, I don't want to work on a Friday issues, said Julia hasn't worked on a Friday for a year. Really good to talk to you, Baroness Ros Altmann. Thank you very much indeed for that.